All right, we're on holding by Pirkei Avos, Ethics for Fathers, as it is known. Again, we're going holding by Pirkei Avos, Ethics for Fathers, as is known. We are in chapter 2, Mishnah 16. It's part 50. It'll be part 51, part 52, part 53. I am sure. Again, we're going holding by Pirkei Avos, Ethics for Fathers. We are in chapter 2, Mishnah 16, and we've been speaking about the last number of weeks about the Yetzer Hara, about the evil inclination. Rabbi Yeshua says, an evil eye, the evil inclination and hatred of other people remove a person from this world. So, we've spoken about a number of things about the evil inclination and what it does. Now, desire in general, we're going to hit it. I'm not going to say a different way, but we'll see where this goes. The evil inclination, right? The Yetzer Hara, as we will call it, can have a negative effect on a person's life, can have a positive effect on a person's life. How can it be? How could the evil inclination be positive? Because you use it in the right way. In other words, things in general, if they're used the right way, then they can have a positive effect, right? So Leviticus chapter 19, I'll get there. I don't know exactly when, but I'll get there. I'll get there one day. And Leviticus, it says, in chapter 19, it says like this. It says that Torah says, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, you should be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy. That's Leviticus chapter 19, verse 2. Now, again, I have a difference of opinion over there between Rashi and the Ramban and Nachmanides. Rashi explains what does it mean? What does it mean to be holy? It means stay away from forbidden relationship. Right? That's what it means. According to the Ramban, now the Ramban says we should not abuse things that are permissible. Yeah, in other words, you're allowed to eat, you're allowed to drink, but no one says you should be obese, right? You should be 30 pounds overweight or whatever, and no one says you should be an alcoholic, right? So we see very clearly there are things that are permissible. We're allowed to use them. We're not allowed to abuse them, right? The Chol says even things brings down in sharp preachers and the gate of abstinence. He says that there are things that even if they're permitted, still stay away from, right? Excess. Excess can be a bad thing, right? It can certainly be a bad thing, right? It depends how you use it. So, an article last week, somebody does a lot of good work, a lot of charity work, person very, very wealthy, and he's got a private jet. He's got a private jet, and someone had asked him. Someone asked him, he's so philanthropic, you post to yeshivas, girls' schools, this, that. What's the explanation of having a private jet? All right, why should you have a private jet? Now, can a private jet make a person's life easier? 100%. Go here, go there. If you travel a lot, right, would make, it might make sense. Private jet, huge expense, millions of dollars, upkeep and this and that. Okay, but, if you have billions, then really doesn't matter. So the question came up. I mean, someone had asked the question, and said, well, is that really necessary? Right? In other words, can't that money be well spent? Why do you need it? Right? Or just to show you have enough money, that, you can have a jet. I know it's a, bragging piece. I know somebody that has, quite a bit of money. And, one of the things they were lamenting, I mean, secular Jew, but one of the things they were lamenting was the fact they don't have their own plane. Their friends have their own planes. They don't have their own planes. They didn't They didn't get, they didn't make as much money, let's say. So, they have plenty of money, plenty of money, but maybe not enough money for for private plane. So in any case, you say sometimes excess, or many times excess, can be forbidden, or, a person shouldn't have them because more person has, more person wants. But this person made the claim that, if they have it, if they have the money, it comes in handy, right? This thing, this plane comes in handy, it can, save a lot of time, other things as well, even though it's a big expense. And he felt that if God gave him, this bounty, this tremendous amount of money, and he's making tremendous amount of money, why not? Right? What's the problem? Yeah. That was his claim. Not that he's using it to show up, right? Not that, whatever. He's using it for good things, right? So he claimed, that, he's using it for good things. So what's the problem? Right? He has the money for it. He has the money for the upkeep. Right? The Bible says, these excesses may certainly be bad for a person in general, right? That may be true. 100%. 100% that may be true. But if a person uses it in the right way, let's say they use it in the right way. Person has a fancy car, but he helps a lot of people with it. Drives them around, makes their life easier. What's the problem? Because you gotta say, we're wasting money. Let him get let him spend a lot less money. He can use that money for other things. Okay, right? Not, it's very easy on the outside to judge. And to say, well, that's way too much. Right? That's going beyond. How many people exactly living their lives like the Chofetz Chaim? It's okay, we can argue. Right? As Mishna Perkei said, we'll see one day, I don't know when. Right? Hospital. Person should have bread and water. That's how they should survive. That's how they should live. Right? Does it really mean, even if you have means, that's the only thing you should eat? So you don't get tremendous benefit from this world? Right? And then, you're not going to eat other things that may, cause you to want finer things in life. I don't know, whatever it is. Right? The question over there is, do we really take it literally? Right? Is it something we're going to take literally? And say that is the ideal, like to live on nothing, right? Or you can live on bread and water, right? Have some vegetables, whatever, make it more healthy. Okay, right? It also depends what you're going to put on the bread. Doesn't matter. Yeah, if bread is the staff of all life, right? Person eats bread, they'll survive. For sure, they'll survive. Now again, if you eat white bread, it's not as healthy. Okay. You can argue that stuff you put on it may not be so healthy. You can live. You can live very easily, bread and water. All right. All these other things, mixed in, even tell me water's not so healthy. Okay. Any of these fruit drinks, soda, whatever, they're all unhealthy. Tremendously unhealthy. Right? Imagine how much money a person would save. Right? Fruits, vegetables, bread. That's it. Right? I mean, is that the ideal? Is that what we're shooting for? I have to see what the Mishna over there means. If we take it literally or not. Could a person live on bread and water? Yeah. Right? But you're saying it's not for this generation. People want cake, chicken, right? What about chicken and meat? You have to eat on Shabbos. Let's say, drink wine. Eat wine and grape juice. Right? Let's say, okay. Right? So you include those as well. But in general, during the week, what do you eat? That's what you eat. People were so poor at one point, that's what they ate. They didn't have anything else. Right? The question is that an ideal? Right? Is that an ideal to shoot for? That should live on less. Now, for most people, they'd say, no, that's not the ideal. Right? That's not the ideal. At the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, the person wants to live. They don't want to feel like, they're totally poor. Right? So they want to eat. Some will eat better, some not. Right? Meat, kosher meat, sometimes very cost prohibitive. So, maybe on Shabbos, maybe on festivals, whatever, whatever it may be. How many people are eating meat during the week? So many eating meat unless it's leftovers. All right, let's say leftovers from Shabbos. Okay. Well, how many are living that ideal? Probably not too many. All right. Should it be expected? That would be the question. Should it be expected for people to live like that? No. Totally not for this generation. Not even close. Right? How many people in this generation, are going to do that? And that's basically the only thing they'll eat. Right? Probably nobody. So that's not the ideal. But, at the end of the day, person has to eat, right? You got to keep the body going. So obviously, you want to eat healthy. You don't eat so much junk, but, can also, person likes to eat junk, they'll eat junk within reason. Okay. But at the end of the day, maybe it's not an ideal for us, right? But the Chofetz says, Chofetz makes very clear, excess, not good. Because for the most part, what does the person want if they have excess? More of whatever it is, and then there's no limit. And then you get addicted. And they say, I have to have it, right? And then what happens when you can't have it? Yeah, so then it's hard for a person. So excess in general, a person may look at as not being good. Certainly is not being good. But if a person uses it for the sake of it, they use it for the right thing, then that excess is not such a test. Even if they go a little bit overboard with other things, okay. But in general, right? In general, they use the excess for good things. Now, could they, is there more they could do? Probably. But let's say in general, they use the majority for good. Everyone has their choice. Everyone makes the choice. So, if a person has money, where's it go? It's just, in this week's parsha, right? I'll bring down what my Rebbe over here said. Let me just find it here. He says, where I see it. Yeah, he brings down like this. The Torah says this week's parsha that Genesis chapter 14, verse 2. Torah says, Vite lo maisa mikol. Avram took, after the war, whatever, he took maisa from everything. Right? He took maisa from everything. And Rashi explains that which he got, he took maisa because he's a Kohen. Now there's issue over here because who says Avram was a Kohen? Torah hasn't been given yet. Even if you want to say that Avram kept the Torah before it was given, whatever that means, as the Gemara says, still you didn't have Beis Hamikdash, right? Rabbi asked the question, no Beis Hamikdash. Yeah. Not only that, Avram brought sacrifices. Yeah, he brought sacrifice on an altar, on a mizbeach. But it wasn't a Kohen, right? Who says he had to be a Kohen to make sacrifice? You see, Cain and Abel brought sacrifices. Doesn't say they were Kohanim. And again, there's no Beis Hamikdash. Right? So maybe wants to say, a person who's always taking avodas Hashem, someone who works hard to serve God, yeah, in those generations, right before the Torah was given. So he says that avodah, that service to God. What was the service to God? Torah. With learning Torah, whatever Torah looked like at that time. Yeah, and they sat and learned day and night. Someone at that time who sat and learned day and night, he's considered like a Kohen. Right? That's what he wants to say. He was considered like a Kohen. And therefore, he gave Ma'aseh from everything. right? So he says, even though in our own sin, we can't serve God the way we should. We don't have a temple in Jerusalem. We can't give sacrifices. We don't have, Levim that sing in the temple. We can't give sacrifices. But people sit and learn Torah day and night. Yeah, they're considered like Kohanim. And therefore, since they're considered like Kohanim, person has Meiser, that's where it should go. Doesn't mean that's the only place it should go. But he says, Magia and Meiser. That people should give them Meiser. Right? Should give a tenth of what they earn. Just like the Levim in the time of the temple. And the Rambam said, maybe brings this down many times. The Rambam says the end of the laws of Shemitah V'Yovel, the laws of the sabbatical year. He says, Lo Shevet Levi Bavat. So we're not only talking about tribe of Levi over here, but any person who walks the face of the earth, right? And sit and learn day and night, right? And that's what they do. And they have the status, they have the status like a Kohen or a Levite in the temple. Yeah, and they are considered, the Rambam, again, this is Rambam's language, they are considered Kodesh Kadoshim, like the Holy of Holies. So they merit in this world to be like the Kohanim and Levim, even if they're not Kohanim and Levim, just like the Rambam says. So he says that, so then Rabbi says, that's what it means. Shita Mekubetes, one of the great commentators, one of the early commentators, brings down from Gemara and Ksuvis 6a, I think that's where it is. Sorry, it's 58. And he says that the obligation of giving Meiser, of giving charity, where should it go? Where should the essence of a person's charity go? Says the Shita Mikubetz is over there, from the Gemara and Ksuvis. Where should it go? He says to Talmidei Chachamim. Should go to rabbinic scholars, right? Just like Avraham Avinu gave Meister l'Shem, right? He gave 10 to Shem, and he said because of this we're considered like Kohanim Levim, right? I.e., people sit and learn. They're considered like Kohanim and Levim, and therefore, person's Meister, that's where it goes. Now, again, you have orphans, you have widows, you have schools, right? People say you should give it to Kiruv, right? To help people, bring other people back, bring secular Jews back, right? You support that. I mean, there are a lot of things to support, right? A lot of things to support, right? But, we're saying it's crucial to support people like Kohanim and Levim today. Even a Kohen or Levi, they can't serve in the temple today. Right? But someone who sits and learns has that status. So therefore, money should go to them. Right? The person should donate to them. Now, based on that, there was a major rally in Jerusalem on Thursday. Huge rally. Yeah. Trying to get 1 million people to come in order to show, protest against forced conscription of Haredim in the army, right? Not the Orthodox Jews in the army. Now, we're not going to go in the whole thing about shouldn't do the army, whatever. But if someone wants to learn Torah, and that's their job, let's say, they don't recognize it's doing anything, they put people in jail. That's unheard of. It's unheard of in history of Jewish people. That someone wants to learn Torah, they have a forced conscription. It's unheard of. Okay, Jews lived in other countries, right? And there's forced conscription, they didn't have a choice, right? Many of them fled, people got, people got sucked in, people died, people went off, they keep Torah mitzvahs because of what happened with them in the army, whatever it is. Right? So here you need a standing army. Everyone agrees. You say everyone has to serve. Okay, there are exemptions. The Arabs don't serve. Why would the Arabs serve? They're afraid to have them serve. right? They're exempt. They're exemptions, right? So now they want to stop all the exemptions, right? They want to stop all the exemptions. Now, it used to be the argument was, without going so much into detail, but the argument was, may not apply today, right? But the argument was they don't need it. That was true. That for sure was true. Yeah. Why did they want to constrict Orthodox Jews? Right? Their claim is, again, without going into all this, but their claim was and still is, you share the burden. Right? That's the claim. Right? Absolutely. Absolutely, you have to share the burden. If other people have to serve, you also have to serve. Yeah, that was the claim. That has been the claim. Now, that being said, the argument was, and this is still the argument, why do they want them to join? What is burning by so many people to join? Now, the main thing, again, it's a very emotional issue, but the main thing is they'll claim, which is partially true, not fully true, but their claim is that they want ultra-Orthodox Jews to share the burden. That's the claim. Yeah, my kid has to fight, risk their lives. Your kids don't, this and that. That's part of the claim. That's more the emotional claim. But what do they really want more than anything else? Now, they'll say that's the claim, but it's not the total claim. It's a partial claim. It's more the emotional claim. But what do they really want? What do they really want more than anything else? It's not just share the burden. That's for sure part of it, but that's not the whole thing. They want ultra-Orthodox Jews to be like that. They want them to be like secular Jews. That's what they want. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, to go in the army, notwithstanding the danger, that's one thing. It's a spiritual danger, huge spiritual danger. Yeah, you're around people, the way they speak, the way they act. You got women there. I mean, a lot of things going on. Now, you can tell me, well, they got rid of that problem. We want to talk modesty issues, this and that. So they have ultra-Orthodox units. They got religious units, so you don't have that argument. Yeah. So you have less of an argument. But there are so many things, that go on within. Again, what's their ultimate goal? Their ultimate goal is we want to integrate everybody. That's the ultimate goal. No exceptions. Okay, the Arabs, they won't get in there. That makes sense. Right? Yeah, they don't want them in the army. Okay. But everybody else, now women can choose to go in the army. They can choose to go to the army. Well, they can do what they call Sherut Leumi. They can volunteer. They can do other things, without going in combat units or whatever. They don't have to. They're not obligated. Certainly not. Some will. Someone say, yeah, I see plenty of women fighters. Okay. Yeah. Many don't serve, and they do Sherut Leumi. They serve another way. Right? They serve another way. They're not going through the physical things that, the men are going through, and, whole question whether they should be allowed, to shoot guns anyway. When it comes to war, it's a man's thing, not a woman's thing. So they shouldn't be allowed to shoot a gun anyway, or have a gun. What about for protection? Okay, protection is a different issue. Right? But not so simple. Certainly not so simple. And most likely, if a woman gets caught, let's say she's in combat, she gets caught, yeah, as a captive, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to abuse her. It's another reason, right? You say, oh, they can do that to men also. They're not going to. They have a woman, it'll be much easier to abuse a woman than a man. They won't want to abuse a man anyway. They'll abuse them in other words, torture them, whatever. But a woman do other things too, right? So we'll keep this, relatively clean, right? But with all that, again, there are a number of issues. Right? But what's the point? Point is that ultimately their goal is what? is to make us like them. That's the goal. That's the goal. Now, they've done a number of things underhandedly and openly to make life extremely difficult for anyone else. Yeah. So if that's true, and you have modesty issues and other things, as we said before, the argument may not hold so much weight today, right? Because what happened after October 7th, they called up thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, but well before this, when they were talking all about this, for years, their claim, as we said before, everyone has to serve. Okay. That's the claim. Now, the reality of the situation was, first of all, even if 100,000 ultra-Orthodox Jews were through, they wouldn't know what to do with it. They would have absolutely no idea what to do with it. They totally flood the system. So it's not what they want. Yeah, even if they want some and not everybody, whatever, it doesn't matter. Right? If everyone came, according to what they say, they wouldn't function. They would not be able to function. Yeah. So for years, the argument has been, up until this point, the argument has been very clear. You don't need us. It's not a question of needs. Right? So then you come on to the other thing. And the other thing is, well, everyone has to share the burden. But you don't need us. So what's the purpose of taking us? Yeah? Then you have to ask the question. What's the purpose of taking us if there's no need? Now, practically speaking, there was no need. So why do they want ultra-Orthodox Jews? So they'll say, because even if there's no need, everybody has to serve. That's what they say. That 100% is what they say. So now it could be, today the argument's different, and that now they need more people because of what happened. Yeah? So that argument may go by the wayside. But again, what's the ultimate purpose? Right? That's what you can ask the question. What's the ultimate purpose? Is the ultimate purpose because we need more personnel, it doesn't matter, and you're at war, so everyone has to fight? I mean, not so clear. I mean, yeah, we are at war, to a certain extent. I mean, we were, for sure. But at the end of the day, what do I have? You have a secular brass. What do they want? So if they don't need us in general, right, their argument is going to be, as we said before, very clear. Their argument at face value is everybody has to serve. That's their argument. But if there's no need, why take them? There's more of a burden in other ways. So what's the purpose of taking them? What's the answer? We said they want us to be like them. Now, who in their right mind wants to send an 18-year-old kid? Forget about the danger. Forget about the physical danger. Who wants to send an 18, 19-year-old kid, into the army, when they're learning away, when their whole goal is to break them down? Again, if they're not going to learn whatever, might be good for them to do the army. That's a different issue, right? But if they're learning like they should, so then to take them out, you're causing more danger. What's the danger? What did the Rambam here say? The Rambam said, in the laws of Shemitah Yovel, the end of the laws of the sabbatical year, he said people sit and learn full time. And what these people are doing, people are sitting learning full time. What do they have the status of? The Kohen and Levi. They're like the Kohen and Levi serving in the temple, but more than that, they are considered sanctified like the Kodesh Kadosh, like the Holy of Holies. So now, remember, even at the time of King David, you need a standing army. Everyone agrees you need a standing army. Okay. Not everybody joined. You need people sitting and learning. You need both. The success of the army is not based on the military power. Success in the army is bent on prayer. Yeah. And people learning. That's the success. Because make no mistake, Jewish people in Israel, since 1948 have survived by miracles. Absolute miracles. You have nation after nation surrounding them, wanting to destroy them. To destroy them. No question. Now, that being the case, how they survive? Yeah. 6-Day War, absolutely miraculous. Other wars, absolutely miraculous. Can't explain. According to military prowess. Wasn't military prowess. Certainly wasn't. So, you either you believe in divine, or what else you going to say? They got lucky. All of a sudden, armies turn around. They're just, they get deceived by something they see in the sky and they flee and there was nothing there. Like, come on. There are a number of things. The last war we saw, a number of miracles, right? I'm saying up until this point. So what's happening? So because people sitting learning, that is the divine protection, no matter how powerful the army is. And you see, the army's not everything filled up to be either. I mean, you need the army. I'm not saying not. Definitely not saying not. You need the army, for protection. But at the end of the day, how are they successful? Because the people sitting learning. Someone's going to say, well, power of our hands, we're doing this, we're doing that. That's the worst thing a person can say. Take God right out of the picture. God says, oh, you think you're in charge? You think, you got the best army in the Middle East, where, may very well be true. And all that. Okay, God said, I'll show you. You think you're so powerful, I'm going to make you screw up in a major way. Right? So what does God do? He brings October 7th. Right? Heads be rolling because of what happened on October 7th. People said they didn't think it was going to happen. It wasn't imminent, this, that. They blew it. Bottom line, they blew it. Majorly. Biggest catastrophic event of how many Jews died in one single day. Right? In one single day in the Holocaust. That's horrific. That's absolutely horrific. Hasn't happened since the Holocaust. So what happened to all the power? What happened to all the rights? And we don't understand these things. Right? Bottom line, we don't understand why these things happen. Yeah. But when a person says, especially heads of countries and ministers and all that, it's the power of the army, it's power of this, power of that, taking God out of the picture, that is bad. That's the worst thing someone can say. Because then, the Satan, the evil inclination, whatever you want to call it, right? The angel of death comes along in front of God and says, look, your people think, or some of your people think they're so great. They're the ones in charge. It's the power of their arms and the power of what they do. You're going to let that, go unheeded? You're not going to punish them? Look what they're saying. Doesn't matter what they know, what they don't know. Yeah? It's not a question of knowledge. They're making a statement taking you out of the world. Show them. I can imagine the evil inclination in front of God making this accusation. You got a good claim? Got a beautiful claim. What did God do? Took out 1,200 people. And then you have this war for 2 years. Yeah. A lot of soldiers died. I thought it would have been a lot worse. Could have been a heck of a lot worse. Because they booby-trapped the whole place there and whatever. That was also with mercy. Could have been, 10 times worse. But when a person says it's the power of my hand, it's the power of what I do, you take God out of the picture, what do you think God's going to do? How much mercy is God going to have? Mercy is not, it's not infinite. At some point, God goes from his side of mercy to the side of judgment. Puts on his judgment cap, so to speak. And we can imagine God can be pretty ticked off. And look what happened. What happened to the power of the army? They look really bad. We said a lot of heads be falling. Yeah. Something like that happened. Someone was snoozing. Someone totally misread it, or a bunch of people totally misread it. Again, some things are better here, some things are worse here. But all the time, when someone is going to make the claim, it's what I do. It's the power of what you do. You take God out of the picture, that's bad. That could be serious payback. That's the worst thing. The worst thing a person could say. So maybe would always say, well, I'm not afraid what's going to happen in Iran, these other places, could care less. That's not the problem. That's not the ultimate problem. Even though they're going to give us a hard time at the end of days and all that, okay, that may be true. But that's not the ultimate problem. What's the ultimate problem? The ultimate problem, he says, and he always says, the Jews in the land who sin. Now, Jews outside the land also bad. Also bad if they sin. But if you're sitting in the palace of the king, that's 10 times worse. Sodom, what does the Torah say? We just read. Torah says they were extremely evil. The Ramban, the others say God wiped them out. God totally wiped them out. Now, why did he totally wipe them out? They're exceedingly evil. Okay. There are other people also bad. Yeah? You say they weren't as bad. They weren't as bad as Sodom. Okay. Maybe. So why didn't God wipe out other nations? Or tremendously damage them or come close to wiping them out? Right? So some of the commentaries say, where was Sodom? Sodom is in God's backyard. Yeah. It's in a holy place. Even before it became totally holy. In God's backyard, you gotta do that? No. Yesh Gvul, there's a limit. You want to do it outside the land, one thing, there'll be payback. Yeah. There may be serious payback. Okay. You want to do it in the land? That's worse. That is 10 times worse. If anyone wants to come to the land and wants to live here, they want to come here and sanctify it, not the other way around. If you're going to come because, quote unquote, you're a Zionist, and you want to live in the land, okay. But the land can spit you out also. But most people are going to come and dwell in the land. Who are the true Zionists, the ones that keep Torah mitzvahs? So over the last 10 years, 15 years, more, people coming on these trips to make Aliyah, who's coming? Religious Jews. You have some secular Jews here and there. Still have some Zionists left in the world. Okay. The vast majority of people coming are Orthodox Jews. Why? Because they're the ones that have connections to the land. Secular Jews don't have a connection to the land. So why do they want to come here? Good. Because they claim it's the holy land. It's Jewish, it's a Jewish homeland. Okay, but why? Why is it the Jewish homeland? Because God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. And he promised Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, that's going to be our land. It's going to belong to us, regardless of what other nations may say. Or other so-called religions. Belongs to us. That's clear. Right? That 100% clear. Belongs to us. So if it belongs to us, they have no claim. Okay. But at the end of the day, you got to earn it. Yeah, even if it's given, doesn't mean we'll always be here. We haven't been here the last 2,000 years. So you got to earn it. But what's keeping us? What's keeping us here now? What's protecting us more than anything else? Torah. Torah mitzvahs. Throughout this, this horrific exile, the last 2,000 years, what has kept the Jewish people surviving more than anything else? Torah. Not about just speaking Hebrew. Not about, quote unquote, Zionists wanting to come to land, this and that. You don't have Torah mitzvahs, it's like me without the potatoes. You don't have anything. It means you're a nation like other nations. You want your own homeland. That doesn't mean anything. Person wants to come back to Israel so they can eat falafel. Speak Hebrew. What's the point of coming back here without Torah mitzvahs? right? And these people in charge years ago, many, many years ago, by Rebbe's Rebbe, Moshe Schneider, bless them, every one to come here. They didn't want them. They said, we don't want your old Jews and your old, your old language, your old mitzvahs, this, that. We want new Israelis. Build up the country. And what essentially they want? A secular country. People get all teary-eyed when they hear the song Hatikva. Yeah. The Jewish national anthem. Right? Israeli national anthem, let's say. So what are some of the words in Hatikva? They want to be an Am Chovshi, a free nation. Now, one simple explanation. They want to be free from persecution. Not in Europe, not in Russia, not anywhere else. They want to live amongst Jews. There won't be persecution. Okay, that's part of the answer. What's the other part of the answer? What do it mean, Am Chovshi? What does it mean, a free nation? Free nation means without Torah mitzvah. I mean, you read Herzl Schmerzel's book, which I don't recommend. You read his book, The Jewish State. He wanted a state of Jews. Jews to have their own homeland so they aren't getting persecuted. Very good. What did it have to do with Torah mitzvah? Nothing. You're lucky you got Israel. You didn't get, it would have taken Uganda, would have taken Argentina, would have taken other places. But it's lucky you got Israel. Okay. But essentially, what do you want? He wanted Judaism or Israel free of Judaism. One of his great ideas, he used to be an editor of a newspaper, one of his great ideas, an editorial, save all this Jewish persecution. You should convert to Christianity. Beautiful idea. Well, many Jews left. They won't have any persecution. We'll all be Christian. And he had a kid or two, at least, that, they convert to Catholicism. So the advocacy of a homeland was a homeland for what? The falafel. Speak Hebrew. When you take Torah out of the picture, what differentiates Israel from anywhere else? Nothing. Person walks down Tel Aviv, besides hearing the words, words in Hebrew. They hadn't seen Hebrew sign. Yeah. Is Tel Aviv any different than any other place around the world? Any cosmopolitan cities? Might be one of the biggest, capitals of the gays, right? In Tel Aviv. Okay. What makes them different? Torah makes us different. Without Torah, you're no different than an animal. Right? You're absolutely no different than an animal. So the argument is we want you to be like us. Now, that's spiritual suicide. Why would anybody send their kids to the army? For that reason. Their kid will come out more cracked than when it went in. Yeah, I'm ready to talk about the physical danger. That's another issue, but I'm not talking about that. Spiritual danger, much greater. Much greater. Right? More than we're going to influence them. They'll have a tremendous more influence on us. Right? I don't see some people went in the army. Just the conversations people had. They said they're disgusted by what people are talking about. Disgusted by what people talk about. I'm not talking about it necessarily if they were in separate units and this and that. Even by them. I mean, these are not like, rabbinic scholars of generations going into the army. They're going in because, much easier to get a job and do other things, if you do the army. Okay. There are other benefits. Okay. But they're not like the cream of the crop of people learning. They ain't a person going there. What are you going to, you pick up things not so good. We're talking about a spiritual thing, not just a physical thing. But their ultimate goal, bottom line, their ultimate goal is to change us. That's their goal. They want us to be like them, regardless of whether there's a need or not. But remember, for years, up until now, there hasn't been a need. There has not been a need in the last 20, 30, 40 years. There has not been a need. So their claim, again, is even if there's no need, you got to share the burden. But if there's no need, why do you want us? Right? I mean, this is not rocket science. Yeah. So they'll make that claim, but it's not a totally true claim. They essentially want us to be like them. That's what they want. So at the end of the day, now, the only merit this country has to be alive is the fact that people learning in Torah. And now you want to uproot that, that's going to be a serious problem. Serious problem. It's going to take away tremendous divine protection. So if you tell me, it's a secular place, non-Jews, they're the ones in charge, this and that, one thing. Like it was in Russia and other places. Forced conscription, Jews had to go. Everybody had to go. Some people fled, some people went. And the ones that went, it didn't turn out pretty. There are many, tens of thousands lost to Judaism. Not imagine people got killed or whatever. We're talking about spiritual. Now, the divine protection for this place comes because people sit and learn. So now, if people sitting and learning full time, people sitting and learning have the status of the Rambam says, like Kodesh HaKadoshim, like the Holy of Holies, what do you think is going to happen if that status quo is uprooted the way they want? That means, beyond the shadow of a doubt, you will not have the same divine protection. And if you don't have that same divine protection, or close to that, people here in other places in the world are going to be sitting ducks. There will not be protection because you have these savages. That's what they are. You have the savages want more than anything else for October 7th to happen a million times. Million times over. Right? They let out 2,000 terrorists. 2,000 terrorists. One of these terrorists they let out just got caught again. Caught again with a plan to, I don't know, I think it was to like blow up or do something by Rachel's tomb. Well, a lot of people are supposed to be there or whatever, right? Because of, her Yortzeit, commemoration of her death. Right? It was this week. This kid, it was a 16-year-old kid, toast now. They let him out. What do you think he did? He got caught again. What does that tell you? They're not going to rehabilitate. That's what they want. That is what they're continually going to do. So if you don't have the protection of the Kodesh Kedoshim in general, and you want to uproot that, the results will be catastrophic. Catastrophic. They have nothing better to do but put people in jail because of it. I mean, crazy, right? You don't have such a thing in history. But Jewish people, you can understand non-Jews, one thing, right? Jewish people putting their own people in jail. Putting their own people in jail is unheard of. Unheard of. So that's one thing, right? I've spoken about that before. Okay. So what happened? They made a massive protest. There's going to be more protests probably. But they made a massive protest on Thursday. Massive. Yeah. Most of Jerusalem blocked off. Good parts of Jerusalem blocked off. Tens of thousands of people. And what did they do with this thing? Pray. Said Tehillim, said Psalms, said Slichot, said penitential prayer. For like a couple hours. Yeah. A massive amount of people. To show what? We're not going anywhere. Yeah. But for the most part, it was peaceful. They had a few, I would say, rabble rousers. Got nothing better to do, so, they caused some problems. Made desecration of God's name in different ways. But for the most part, no issues. They came, they prayed, they left. But they wanted to show. Yeah, I thought it was going to be 500 people. It's not going to be 1,000 people. We're going to block off majority of the street. right? The entrance of the city. We're gonna, it's chaos. 2 hours. People couldn't get in. People couldn't get out. It's chaos. Yeah. But what was the point? What was the point? You got to protest. You got to show this is wrong. But what if a handful of protesters here? Rabbi came out. Other great people came out. Yeah, with that, everyone's gonna go. Everybody's gonna go. People went. Hundreds of thousands of people were there. Someone asked, there are going to be 600,000 people, special blessing. You see, you saved, there were 600,000 Jews. Yeah. So I asked a friend of mine, are they going to know? Are they going to know when 600,000 make the blessing? They say, people in helicopters, they can tell this, that, I don't know. Right? I don't know how many people were there. Yeah. It was a massive thing. Right? Yeah, my rabbi said it's not gonna be the last one either. They're gonna show we're not going anywhere. You want to make a war? Okay, we'll also make a war. Right? This is nothing new. It's just that now they're making a big effort now. You don't go, you got drafted, you don't go, you sit in jail. Right? It never happened. Then now, if you tell me this happened 10 years ago, would you tell me it happened 15 years ago? They have no leg to stand on. Right? Why don't they have a leg to stand on? Because they don't need them. 100%. Again, the claim may be different today. Could very well be different. Regardless of that, spiritual danger is much greater. Much greater. All right, that's one thing. The other thing was, so here the Rambam said, people sitting learning have the status of the Holy of Holies. You want to mess with the Holy of Holies? You want to mess up with divine protection? It's a good way to do it. Why do you think people are up in arms? Why do you think they're going to be these protests? Yeah, for exactly that reason. You're losing divine protection, just the opposite. You should have more people sitting and learning. You need a standing army. No one disagrees. When we don't have the divine protection, standing army is not going to help. Right? So we're not going to help. So that's one thing. Now, why did I bring this up? Because at the end, he says, what do I learn? Then Rashi says over here, book of Genesis chapter 14, verse 2, Rashi says that Avram took Misa from everything because they're status of a Kohen. So he says, you learn from here what? That the Shita Mikupes is over there, and Ksuva says that the obligation of Misa of taking 10%, where should it go? Where should the essence of it go? To rabbinic scholars. Yeah? Rabbinic scholars aren't getting rich by any stretch. Right? Yeah. They're getting a stipend, whatever they get. They always need help. People always need help. Again, doesn't mean, widows and orphans shouldn't be helped. It doesn't mean yeshiva shouldn't be helped. Doesn't mean for kiruv, for doing outreach shouldn't be helped. Plenty of things need to be helped. Yeah, but he's telling you, where is the essence of it should it go? What's the most important place it should go to? Says the Shita Mukubetza, it should go to rabbinic scholars. Not to say other things aren't important. Plenty of other things are important. This is the most important thing. Because imagine if a rabbinic scholar, again, we're not talking about getting rich by any stretch. Yeah, if their needs are taken care of, they don't have to worry like where money's going to come from in general. And doesn't that mean they'll be able to learn better? Doesn't mean they won't have other evil inclinations for other things. Okay. Right? But the essence is they're going to learn like fire, even learn like more fire when they don't have this distraction. Money, a huge distraction. They say how many people can sit and learn for so long, and they say, okay, that's not the issue. That's not the issue. You want to produce people that are going to be great for the next generation, they have to have the yoke of earning a living off their head. They can't do both. Very hard to do both. It's very rare where you see somebody's a true rabbinic scholar, and they're in business also. You have cases. You have cases like that, even in recent times, right? You take somebody like or prime Magois of blessed memory, the Torah giants, right? Last generation, 100 years ago, more. He was in business, and he told his wife, "I'm gonna be locked in my room till 2 o'clock. Till 2 o'clock, I'm dead to the world. Doesn't matter who comes, what happens, this, that, I'm dead to the world. When I come out at 2 o'clock, whoever needs me, whatever, I'll take care of whatever I need to take care of. Till 2 o'clock, sitting and learning." Two people come in one day. Two people come in, and they want to see him. And his wife says, "No, can't be disturbed till 2 o'clock." Tell him, say, "Listen, for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, he's gonna make tens of thousands of rubles. Why not? Just go in and tell him we're here for a business deal. It's not gonna take any time. He's gonna make a ton of money." He said that's his instruction. No one can disturb him. And they left. So he came out of his room 2 o'clock. His wife tells him the story, and he's dancing. And Margolis is dancing. And he said, "I can't believe the Rabboni Shalom of God thinks my Torah learning is worth tens of thousands of rubles." He lost the money, but he didn't lose. Yeah. Because that's what the power of Torah is. So you have somebody like that. Or somebody like the Aruch HaShulchan, right? Or, a magnus opus called the Aruch HaShulchan, which is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, right? On basically all of code of Jewish law, right? When it comes to what do you call it? Blessings, holidays, Shabbos, the laws of damages, marriage law. Like he wrote on everything. Chofetz Chaim only wrote on Orach Chaim. Only wrote on about Shabbos and holidays, and festivals and all that. He didn't write on all four. The Aruch HaShulchan did, but the Aruch HaShulchan himself, he goes through all the Gemaras, explains who holds what and why and how he holds, and so whatever. Top rabbinic scholars more than 100 years ago. More than 100 years ago. He was a banker. Essentially, he was a banker. Yeah, he was a banker. But imagine, imagine someone at that caliber, one of the Torah giants of the generation, nothing to talk about, also was a banker. Now, that being the case, is that common? No. Definitely not common. Yeah. If a person, is a big rabbinic scholar and this and that, they're not doing anything else. That's their focus. That 100% is their main focus. To trying to do both is very hard. Very, very hard. Right? Very, very hard. Yeah. So if that's the case, if that is the case, then you need people that are going to sit and learn. And you're producing the next generation. Next generation of rabbinic scholars. You need that. For sure you need that. Yeah, and, it's not a question of them living the lap of luxury. It's not a question of that at all. But the question is it's survival. Is essentially survival. And how they're going to survive. So imagine if a person had that lifted off their head. They had that lifted off their head. And they're able to sit and learn like they should. Without any worries. Torah is a different Torah. Now, even if people do have certain worries, this and that, okay, right? They tune it all out. They do what they need to do. One of my rabbis, blessed memory, he basically said when he's learning, that's it. World shut off. Exactly like Rabbi Margolis. Total world is shut off. He's in the world of a buying Rav, right? He's in the world of a buying Rav, arguing about this, arguing about that, whatever it is. Okay, when he has to come out and he has to deal with other things, fine. But he said, if a person doesn't have that amount, you got to find the amount of time to do it. Right? And that time has to be what we call harego yavu. Right? In other words, you have to die rather than transgress over here, meaning it's got to be the most important thing. Everything else is shut up. That's like, God forbid, person's house on fire or something like that. Right? It's an absolute emergency. Yeah. Otherwise, when a person learns, they're dead to the world. They have to be looked at as they're dead to the world. Because if not, then it's easy to get distracted. Very, very easy. Very, very easy to get distracted. So, some people say, wow, they've learned enough. Let them go out, let them this. Okay. But they need to be trained. I remember it was, fundraising for for a place I was learning, many, many years ago. And so whatever, I took a driver and it's like, okay, this is what this person should give, whatever, knocked on the door. And this person's like, what? I gotta understand, giving for cheder for kids in like elementary school or high school or something, but like these people have to get jobs. Yeah. These people have to get jobs. So I said, part of the thing when you're trying to collect money is like, you have to have a pocket for, the embarrassment also you're gonna get. So I said, but this is what people are being trained for. This is exactly what they're being trained for. I'm like, no, I can't give to that. Like, and that was it. Now, the person normally gave, like $1 or $2 or whatever. So the driver said, what, shouldn't give you anything? Did he give you nothing? I said, no. He just like shook his head, said, all right, someone has the merit to give. They have the merit to give. If they don't have the merit to give. Okay? Right? But at the end of the day, the statement is true. You're trying to produce people that, eventually want to give to others, but they have to get the knowledge. It takes a while to get the knowledge. But when they have the knowledge, it's a whole different thing. Right? So imagine somebody has that burden lifted off their head. And again, it's, the problem is, the problem is people look at these people like, like they're, they stick out their hand, they call them in Yiddish like schnorrs, like people that come along just to collect money. No one has any problem, universities, where, students get stipends, maybe they get if they're doing like a PhD, they say pilot higher and deeper, or Papa has dough, getting a PhD, so whatever, they give them a place to live, they give them a stipend. No one calls them a schnorr. No one says, oh, they're not doing anything for the world. Look, my kid's writing a book on tax law. Beautiful. Book on tax law? That's like, okay, maybe you need books on tax law. Okay. Yeah. No offense to anyone who does tax out there, whatever. So yeah, this guy's writing a book on tax law. Yeah, true story. Person writing a book on tax law. Very good. Got a place to live. Got a stipend. No one called him anything. No one said, oh, look at the schnorr. Look at this person who's like taking handouts. No, they don't look at him like he's taking a handout. He's doing something for the world. Yeah, he's writing a book on tax law. Yeah. He's showing the importance of Chinese letters and, the time of Shanghai Shek or whatever. I don't know. That's important in the world. Because it's doing something for the world. I don't know. Whatever it's doing for the world. That is anybody. Is anybody in their right mind? If they're not in their right mind. But is anyone in their right mind in the secular world going to say, oh, look at that person taking a handout. They're giving him a free apartment. They're giving him a handout. They're giving him stipend. They're giving him a handout. And they look at him, like as king of the world. Oh, someone wants to learn ancient Jewish texts and this and that. Oh, he's taking a handout. He's a sponge. He's a cockroach. He's this. He's that. What's the difference? What's the difference? Because the book on tax law is respected. Being a rabbinic scholar is not respected. That's different. Major difference. Yeah, let me take some questions here. There's a whole question here. what they want, or somebody mentioned, let's say better, someone mentions who takes on the yoke of worldly concern, is taken off, and the world would be its side to go on Torah scholar. Yeah, that's very easy to say. So the Mishna Pirkei Avos. Yeah. The Gemara brings down as well. That's very easy to say. It doesn't always work out that way. Now, it may not work out that way for different reasons. Yeah. Some people try to imitate or Shimon Bar Yochai by, sitting learning, saying Tehillim, and they asked, but it didn't go for them like it did for Shimon Bar Yochai. They gave different reasons why. But imitating something and getting the same result is not the same thing. It's not the same thing. So you say, well, the people doing it having difficulty are not Torah scholars. Not true. It's totally not true. Yeah. Minimal level, let's say like this. I just heard recently, what's the single biggest problem in the Orthodox community today? Single biggest problem in the Orthodox community today is paying tuition. The single biggest problem. Tuition in Jewish schools is out of control. But, people teaching there aren't making so much money and whatever. They need a lot of money. Now, you have 5 or 6 kids in the system. It's a huge amount of money. So the stat is, practically speaking, after taxes, if a person is not making $300,000 a year, you're not making it. You're not making it. It's not a joke. This is what people in the know are saying. Now, I heard many, many years ago, you're not making $100,000. Yeah. You live in New York and New Jersey, let's say, you're not making it. You got tuition, which is the biggest killer. You got car payments, let's say. You have a mortgage or rents. You have foods, right? You got to send your kids to camp. I mean, you got huge expenses. Huge expense. So even if someone's making that kind of money, statistically, you're struggling. You will not be able to pay full tuition. This is what people in the field in the know are saying. You will not be able to pay full tuition. Now, if you're talking about someone sitting and learning, and they're making a lot less money, even if the wife works, they ain't making $300,000 a year. If you're not going to make $100,000 a year, yeah, let's say. So you take somebody like that, a true rabbinic scholar. Now they have to marry off kids. You say, well, God provides and this and that. Okay. Where's the money going to come from? Minimally. Where is the money going to come from if they're struggling already? It's not a question they're false scholars. Not talking about that. You say, well, if they're true scholars, God will take care of their needs anyway. Could be. Or let's say they get inheritance, other things, whatever. But the stats are, if you're not making a certain amount of money, you're not making it. That has nothing to do with whether you're a rabbinic scholar or not. Now, the expenses are way out of control. But that's the reality. Right? That is the reality. So, okay, in Israel, you need less money. Okay. And you make less money. Okay. But you still have to marry off your kids. And the miracle is the Satmar Rebbe said. It's not, it was not the 6-Day War. The miracle is how ultra-Orthodox Jews marry off their kids. Yeah. And, wedding halls today, when it's permissible to get married, they're packed every night. How are they packed every night? Yeah, they're packed. They're absolutely packed. But it's not, that's not the case, though. Right? In some cases, I would agree. Maybe people aren't true rabbinic scholars. Okay. Maybe. What about the ones that are? You can't use that argument. Because if they're true rabbinic scholars, you tell me, well, according to that, all their needs have been taken care of. I don't know. There are rabbinic scholars out there, I know one of my rabbis that's, a blessed memory, struggled, always struggled living in Israel. Want to tell me it wasn't true rabbinic scholar? It is true rabbinic scholar. Yeah. Absolute rabbinic scholar, nothing talking about. I know a number of people like that. The statement's not true. Right? So then the question is, what does the Gemara mean? Right? If you do what you're supposed to do, all your needs should be taken care of. Yeah, but what if your basic needs, you're talking about a time where basic needs are like 10, 20 times the amount they needed before. So again, if God can provide, which he can, and he can take care of everybody's needs, fish will take care of their needs also. True? Right? Not going to deny that. That's true. But what happens, let's say, their medical expense, their other expense. You think God can take care of those needs also. Okay. Not going to deny that. Also true. You're living in very different times. Very, very different times. The cost of living was not even close to what it was back then. Not even close. The cost of living skyrocketed. Right? Exactly what's supposed to happen before the Messiah comes. Another proof that we're living in the age of the Messiah. So there are expenses that, they never had before. But again, you could make the argument. I'm not going to say not. You could make the argument and say, well, God can take care of person needs anyway. Right? Could. I'm talking very different times. Very, very different times. Yeah. So, partially, I'll say, maybe some of these people are not true rabbinic scholars. Okay. But then you're going to say, what about people that are true rabbinic scholars? Yeah. You take like somebody, sort of like Rebbe Chana Wasserman, Hashem Yikam Dam, famous student of the Chofetz Chaim. Yeah, traveled around a lot for the yeshiva, whatever. He's also living in poverty. Everybody in Europe was living in poverty. We have major rabbinic scholars. Major. Nobody today comes close to them. Nobody. You want to tell me they weren't true rabbinic scholars? That's hard to say. Right? That's not a true statement. So, why did God take care of their needs? Good question. Why do you make it so hard for them? Because when it's hard for a person, the Torah is much greater. When when a person is struggling, and it makes their emunah much stronger, makes the Torah much stronger. Yeah. Why did God, the commentaries ask, why did God make, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, why did he make them barren? Why did he make them that it was hard for them to have kids? Because he loves the prayers of the righteous. Now, you could say, come on, can he do it some other way? Like, when someone's in pain, when someone has hardship, tremendous hardship, they pray differently. They pray from the depths of the heart. Right? They pray totally differently. Who knows how many, God forbid, catastrophes were, went by the side, went by the sea, so to speak, because of their prayers throughout the generation. You see, we had a lot of pogroms, a lot of difficulty, this, that, okay. But imagine how many times we were saved because of their prayer. So you say, but why did God do that? Again, when a person has hardship, and they have difficult hardship, what does it do to a person? It does one or two things. Either it breaks them, right? Right? Either it breaks them, right? Or it makes them so strong. The Torah is different. Before the Messiah comes, it's supposed to be easy. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to struggle with money. Even though we're living in a tremendously wealthy generation, more than any generation in the history of man. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, people struggle throughout the generation. true bona fide rabbinic scholar. You very rarely see people like Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, right? He had great wealth. He said before he died, lift up his fingers and never got benefit from this world. Yeah, in general. But he had tremendous wealth. You don't normally see a true bona fide rabbinic scholar with wealth. You don't see it. Right? It's very rare. It's very rare that people who have money, are going to be rabbinic scholars. So when I unfortunately, lost, or I shouldn't say lost, I had stolen all my money years ago. So everyone told me, well, the Gemara Bracha says, not everybody can inherit both worlds. In other words, you don't see people who have money that are rabbinic scholars, and vice versa. You don't see it. So I asked him tongue in cheek, I said, are you making fun of me? I said, or, like you humoring me? You're making fun of me. Yeah. They said, so I told him like this. I told him that whatever, when I first came back to Israel, and whatever, I was ordered by him in the morning. So I was buying one Purim. I learned a lot first 5-6 months I was here. Now I came back. And I told him what I learned, told him what I went through. And I was buying one Purim. So it's a tremendous day for bracha, for blessing. So I told him, I said, listen, if I'm going to struggle and I'm going to have difficulty with livelihood, with parnasa, he said, I want the blessing of Torah. I said, you give me the blessing of Kesef Torah. That's what I said. The crown of Torah. I said, you give me that blessing. I said, I'll forego livelihood. I'll forego. If it's going to be hard, it'll be hard. Okay. I said, if I can't have both, you give me that. I said, you give me the blessing for that. Like banging on his table. Right? Don't do this. Yeah? I was like, come on. I said, that's what I want. No, I want more. I want that more than anything else. I said, you give me that blessing. Okay, I'm not saying the world's greatest Torah scholar by any stretch. Yeah. But it's like anything else. You got to want it. You got to want it more than anything else. So regardless of what's going on in the world, no matter how difficult things get, first it's going to be fixed in Torah. That has to be the most important thing you do. And you turn yourself off from the world. When I was in the States, I was involved in real estate. People knew before 11:30, you're not getting a hold of me. You will not get a hold of me. If it's a deal, you wait. Yeah, but you won't get a hold of me. Unless I had other things to do, whatever. I had a certain amount of time. I had like 3 hours in the morning. Maybe a little bit more. I had like 3.5 hours in the morning. Right? That was my fixed time. Right? When I came back, I came back to Israel. Guys thought, the Lord was, thought they saw a ghost. They're like, oh, you just visited? I was like, no. I came back. I said, what do you mean? You were in Chile? I said, right. I said, I went to Lakewood. I was in New Jersey, and I came back. Totally thought to seen the ghost. So I said, what'd you do there? I said, I was involved in real estate, whatever. The whole market crashed. 2008 when I came back. So I said, don't worry, don't, you shouldn't think I wasn't, I was just wasting time, and I wasn't learning. So those are different, tractors I'd finished 3, 4 before I came back. That's what it has to be. In other words, King Solomon says in Proverbs, you got to want it more than anything else. You 100% have to want it more than anything else. And that's not the case, you won't have it. You got to fight for it. But it doesn't mean every last thing is going to go my way when I'm doing it. Doesn't mean that. I'm not saying the person has to be broke, totally in debt and other things, may happen. You have to marry off kids and other things. Okay. Everyone, whatever they have to go through. But having both, I can tell you from experience, having both, you don't normally get. Because it's like water and oil. They don't mix. They don't mix. Now again, you gotta try best of your ability and make ends meet. Okay. We have an obligation to do that, no question. But a lot of times we look up to heaven and we say, really? Like, okay, you're putting me through this, putting me through that. And with all the difficulty, I'll tell you, there's a lot of difficulty over the years. With a lot of difficulty, regardless of whether I had my own apartment or not, or I was renting. Yeah. At the end of the day, wasn't starving. Wasn't on the street. Kids were taken care of. Food, and didn't have any, health issues. Now my kids, I married off 4 kids. That was pretty miraculous also. No question. So again, pick your poison. Would you rather have health issues? People say no. What if you have health issues and you have monetary issues? Well, you're lucky. You got both. Yeah? Sometimes these things go hand in hand. Sometimes they don't. But at the end of the day, what am I thankful for? What do you think? Plenty of things to be thankful for. We always look, I shouldn't say always, but sometimes look at the glass as half empty. We're not happy with what we have. We complain. Should have this, should have that. Yeah, the person's not healthy. Why am I going through this? Why I have to suffer this way? A lot of questions. A lot of questions and no answers. They're tests, right? That's the answer. They are tests in order to strengthen us. This is what the evil inclination is. Am I going to be successful against it? Right? Or is it going to break me? That is the test. That is the majority of the test. Now, does God want us to be broken? Nope. 100% doesn't want us to be broken. Yeah. If he doesn't want us to be broken, then why give us these tests? Because it makes us who we are. Right? We have to be in this world and be tested. That's how you get a portion of the world to come. You have to be in this world. But the tests have to be so hard, everyone according to their level. Everyone according to their level. So I'll tell you the truth, when I had money, I had other tests. It's not like you have money, you have no tests. Plenty of tests. I don't think I passed all of them. Whatever, difficult tests. In many ways. Some still going through to a certain extent. I have some things painful. Not as painful today, but you look at them and you say, well, and what my was saying many times about Bali Tshuva. People come back to Judaism, and what happens? You have hardship you never had before. Or maybe it followed you, I don't know, but it could be a hardship you never had. Maybe you never had livelihood issues before. Now you have livelihood issues. Or health issues. Or kids issues, or anything. Many things. See, people think and they make a mistake. They make a very serious mistake and think, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to be a Noahide. I'm going to get the Noahide laws. Or I'm going to convert, and then everything's going to be good. Like God promised Abraham, don't worry. Right? Leave everything you know. You're going to go to a place you don't know. It's all going to be good. You're going to have money, fame. You have kids, because you're going to have kids at that time. You're going to have kids. You're going to have all these things. We say, okay, where do I sign up? God doesn't tell him where he's going. Not only that, not only that, as my Rebbe said, he was a kiruv factory. He was bringing people close to Torah left and right. And what happened? God tells him to leave. What was going to take over? God tells him to leave. How can I leave all these people? God tells him to leave. That's the test. Right? So my Rebbe said, what was the essence of that test? The essence was the test itself. Didn't complain. That was the essence of the test. Not just he went through the test, but he had no complaints. When God tells him to kill Isaac, to kill Yitzchak, it goes against everything he knows. God tells him, Yishmael, Don't worry about your Shmuel. You're going to have a son. Everything spiritual you're going to give to him. He's going to be, your offspring is going to carry the torch of Torah. Very good. Then God says kill him. Makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. But my Rebbe said, what was the answer to the test? The answer to the test is no complaints. No question. Because obviously it's supposed to be good for him. How can this be good for him? How can him going to, if he could have ended up in Pago, could have ended up anywhere. Yeah, absolutely could have ended up anywhere when God tells him to leave. Couldn't he have questions? Listen, I have this kiwi factory here. I'm doing great work. But he understood it was for his own good. It's God. It's all good. A lot of things we don't understand. Okay. So what did Abraham say? To my own good. He didn't complain. The test with Isaac, huge test. Huge test. He doesn't complain. Doesn't complain. That's the test. Not just going through it. Are you going to go through it and complain? And say, woe to me. Why am I going through this? Woe to me, this hardship. Right? Are we going to go through it or not? Right? That's the place. That is the question. Now, sometimes you do it better, sometimes not. Okay. So what? That's my test. That's what I'm here for. No one says you're going to live in this world, it's going to be easy, right? People say, but it doesn't have to be this hard. Who says? Who says how hard it's supposed to be? There's a lot of things we could complain about, yeah? A lot of things. That just means we forget what we're here for. That means we forget the goodness. And when you see goodness, yeah, you got to jump on it. You have to say thank you very much. All the time. Thank you for air. Thank you for all these things. God doesn't have to give it to you. Or they ate an apple, had a drink. You thank him for that. Right? Whether you have to make a blessing or not as a non-Jew, good question, but it doesn't matter. You thank him for everything you have. Then you see the goodness. We're very quick to see the bad. Yeah, and that's the whole question. If God is all good, why do these things happen? Good, they're all tests. Every last one of them is a test. But when a person turns over a new leaf and they say, now I believe in God, now I'm going to keep what he says, what does the person expect wrongly? What do they expect? Everything's going to go smooth. That's what they expect. And that's wrong. Someone comes to my Rebbe's Rebbe or Moshe Schneider, blessed memory, and asks him, he says, I want a blessing. So Moshe Schneider asked him what blessing you want. So he said, I want everything to go glatt. I want everything to be smooth. So he said, I can't give you a blessing like that. Blessing in vain. Yeah? He said, I'll give you a true blessing. Whatever trials and tribulations you have, you should be able to overcome them. That's a true blessing. Now, is it easy to overcome trials? No. Well, that's what we're here for. Now, could it be? The evil good age is going to come and try and break us? Yes. Try and say, you shouldn't pray to God, shouldn't do these things? Yes. He's very good at what he does. Doesn't need me to agree. Does a very good job. We could be OCD and say, I want to do this, I want to do that. Yeah, and you get sidetracked and you don't do what you're supposed to do. And then you say, why should God listen to my prayers anyway? Right? That's the work of Moreno, Rabbeinu, the Eitzar. That's what the Eitzar wants. But when a person signs up and a person says, I'm going to change my life and I'm going to do this and I'm going to try and do this to the best of my ability. And that's what we're here for, to try to the best of our ability. Very good. And then we get slammed. And we get slammed all over the place, let's say. Then what does the person say? I changed my life. My family hates me. I don't, speak to them. I lost so many things, quote unquote. And this is how you treat me? That's what some people will say. Why? Because if they change their life, And now they're in God's good graces because they're keeping Torah mitzvahs, whatever level, whatever their obligation is. They're expecting the red carpet. And everything's supposed to be easy. Yeah. Survey says, not true. God's going to judge us how he judges us. But changing your life, that's good. Going in the right direction is good. That doesn't mean one thing you're not going to have a problem with. Whether it's livelihood, family, both, health. It's all a test. That's what it is. Are you going to praise me or not? But don't make the mistake and think, well, I changed my life. Everything should be good. It will be good. Yeah, but doesn't mean you're not going to have trials. Doesn't mean you're not going to have hardship. And there are plenty of people complain. Plenty. I hear a lot of it. And it's not fair. And I'm doing this. And this is what happened. And so what do I have to fix? So I say everything. You've got to keep plugging away. That's what the evil inclination wants. The evil inclination wants to take a sledgehammer, right, and slaughter you. That's what it wants. So at the end of the day, no matter what the hardship is, you're holding on to God for dear life. And you're saying, I'm not going anywhere. This is a test. I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to work hard. It doesn't matter. Yeah? Now, some people can get broken by it. Okay. Again, everybody has hardship. But it's not a question of what's fair, what's not fair. See, God's going to judge us however he judges us. Why people go through this and not through other things? Why the evil people have it easy? You're going to say it's not fair. They spit in God's face every day. Well, think about it. These people are going to be toast in the next world if they even get there. They may die like a dog and go poof. Nothing happens and they lose their portion of the world to come. So God has to give them the world to come in this world. He has to give them the reward of the mitzvah in this world. So that's why some people, I'm not saying everybody, but, some of these evil people will have it easier because God's going to obliterate them. Totally obliterate them. So you say, well, in theory, it sounds nice, but, it's hard to see evil people prosper. Okay. God's going to take care of them. You have to worry about that. Yeah. Now, if you know, let's say you knew. You had a crystal ball. God showed you. This person caused you damage this way, the other way, and God gave them money and this and that. God's going to show you what's going to happen. Let's say he would show you. He would show you what happened to them. You'll think, okay, not a problem. We don't see that. Right? We don't see that. Now, we may see they die a horrible death, this and that, okay. Could that be atonement? Could be, partial atonement. Maybe not a full atonement. But what if we know 100% this person's going to get toast in the next world? Nothing. Die like a dog. No doggy heaven, yeah? They're going to die like a dog. Wouldn't that make us feel better? It'd make us feel better, but we don't see it. We're not there. Yeah? That's what we have to think. Just because they have it good doesn't mean they're good in God's eyes by any stretch. Maybe they did one mitzvah in their life, or 2 mitzvahs in their life. God has to reward them. Right? Yeah. Why does he have to reward them? Because that's part of the divine plan. Exactly part of the divine plan. People do the right thing, they should get rewarded. They do the wrong thing, they get punished. But if you only did one right thing and God's going to punish you for eternity or whatever, so he has to reward you. You can't go against what he said. You can't go against what he believes in how he set up the world. You can't do that. So he has to reward them. Even for the one mitzvah they did. Very good. God has to reward them. We say it's not fair, they have it so easy. Oh, they ain't getting it easy. They ain't get, the way their end is going to be, now we want people to suffer. We want them to have hardship. Doesn't always work out that way. Not necessarily. But there are people that they get what they deserve. Right? Now, make no mistake. They get what they deserve. Even if you tell me, this person, whatever, died in their sleep. Okay. They didn't suffer. They died in their sleep. Okay. God will take care of them later. We don't have to worry about that. But if we see like they have a very rough end, they suffer tremendously, then what does the person see? They'll say, with all their money, they'll say, they're getting what they deserve. Okay, but it doesn't end there. It may very well not end there. Yeah, but that's not something we have to worry about, right? Keep that in mind. But this is the problem. This 100% is the problem. Because people are going to say, I changed my life, I did this, and this is how God rewards me. Yeah, that's the whole point. Is that it's not? It doesn't mean everything's going to be easy afterward. You're getting judged in a whole different way now. You want to be close to the king, you get judged differently. You have a different way of looking at God's looking at you in a totally different way. That's why it changes. Now you're a totally different person, right? But again, the mistake is that a person says, well, I deserve the goodness. I deserve, I deserve plenty of money. I deserve this. But there are trials and tribulations. There will be now different trials and tribulations. So people get thrown off by that. They'll say, but it's not fair. I'm doing this. Look what other people are doing. It's not a question of what other people are doing. God is judging you with a whole separate, whole thing of separate parameters here. The whole different thing. Right? So we have to get this out of our head and say, it's about what's fair or what not fair. No, it has nothing to do with being fair or not. God's going to call it the way he sees it. And whatever we go through, we have to be better. We have to strive to be better. And we have to hold on for dear life regardless. Right? That is the point. Someone here asks, if wherever he goes, there's always one person, even a stranger, who stare and scream at us. Is this God telling us to leave? No. No, he's not telling you to leave, right? You might have weird people out there where, if it's a constant thing, but someone says, wherever I go, this happens, doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something wrong. It's also part of the test, right? Also part of the test. If you see a pattern, if a person would see a pattern of things they do or things they see, and the same pattern keeps going over and over again, yeah, then you might want to say, okay, something to look into. What is the person doing to cause it? Now, if somebody says nothing, they're doing nothing, they say, well, it's an interesting coincidence that happens in different places. Okay. Right? If you see a pattern, let's say there's a pattern of behavior. Let's say the way a person speaks, the way they may dress or other things. Yeah. If there's a pattern or behavior that leads to that, then you got to change pattern behavior. If it's not a pattern of behavior, yeah, not something specific where, this would happen all the time and it's causing attention to a person, right? So then, then I would say that, not something, nothing to worry about. Yeah, why? You say, but it's a coincidence. It happened in different places. Okay, so what? Yeah, if you can pinpoint a certain, certain character trait, certain something that might have caused it, then that's the character you got to work on. If it's something you can't figure out, well, let's say, you act the same way. You're not really doing anything wrong, right? Are there strange people in every place? Sure. 100%. Right? But again, if this happens and it calls attention to it, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's something to be, concerned about. But we do say, that actions certainly have repercussions. And it could be, it's something the person has done, before or does, and it sort of follows them. Right? It could be, like in Ein Hara, spoke a lot about Ein Hara and the evil eye. So, my Rebbe told me quite clearly that if a person has it, but they cause someone to be jealous or whatever it is, it can follow you. Yeah. But I once asked them, I had certain problems in a certain place, went to another place, had other problems. So when I asked him if I thought I had Ein Hara, an evil eye, he's like, I don't think I know. So then I asked, after my wife screamed, then I asked him, could it follow you from place to place? And he said, yes. Yeah. So regardless of you didn't do anything wrong in second place, right? That thing could follow you somewhere else. Now, in this case, in Yeah, so if it's people, let's say, that have their own issues, yeah, if they have their own issues, right? If it's their own issues, and there's a pattern of what they want, that's not your issue. It's not nine horror either. It's not I think it's an evil eye either. But again, if there's a pattern with certain types of people, yeah, and you can't give them what they need, and this is what happens, okay, but you didn't do anything wrong. No one's saying over you did anything wrong, right? There's a pattern, right? Yeah, let's say, I had a case where I'm not sure this person gave me nine horror or not, but somebody obviously desperately in need of help, and basically accused me of shirking responsibility. And said I should have helped more. I mean, also got screamed at. Also got screamed at. Now, this person might have been in a very desperate situation. Not that I necessarily knew the person very well at all. Yeah. No, the person had a claim. I didn't do what I should have done. I should have done more. Okay. Maybe, maybe it's a good reason why I lost my money. Maybe I should have helped them more. I don't know. Whatever. Whatever it may be. Yeah, but if a person's in a certain disposition, let's say, person in a certain disposition, and they want something from you, you can't give them. And let's say it'd be forbidden to give them. Yeah, and that's their reaction. You didn't do anything wrong because you're not allowed to. Yeah, so that's not a pattern. I mean, it's a pattern in certain type of people. Okay, but if you can't give them something that they want because it's forbidden, and that's what they do, that is not cause for concern. Because the reason is the point is that God doesn't want you to help. God does not want you to interact in a forbidden way. So since He doesn't want to act, for you to act in a forbidden way, so what does He do? He has people screaming at you. Okay, doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Yeah, someone told me a story. Friday night, whatever. I was walking home from shul, and he was telling me a story talking about about this rally or whatever, protesting. And so he told me that he had a relative that was intermarried, and that was she told him, he said, you gotta protest. You gotta say, what they're doing is wrong. So he told me that he told the head of the yeshiva, but they're not gonna listen. He said they're never gonna listen. He said, it doesn't matter. Sometimes, like my Rebbe said, name of the brisker of and others, you got to protest even no one's going to listen. So he said, I called him up. I told him, he said, listen, it's nothing personal, but I'm telling you, personally saying that this is wrong, right? Personally saying this is wrong, and, I have to stand up for Torah and mitzvahs. You're doing a totally wrong thing, whatever. Person screamed at him, yelled at him, this, that. They're like, part of his family never speak to him again. They never spoke to him again. No, he did what he had to do. Right? There's sometimes you have to do that. I've done it myself. Yeah. It didn't end pretty. But okay. Yeah. So what do? You get screamed at. You get yelled at. It said, you're backwards, you're medieval, you're this, you're that. Who are you, right, to say what I have to do? Nobody. I'm a nobody to say anything. Right? The Torah says it's wrong. So I'm telling you it's wrong. You have to know it's wrong. Right? I've said many times. Everyone else can bow down to them and say how great they are and this and that, and what a great spouse they have and this and that. But you're the only person saying, that it's wrong. So what happens? They get very upset. Why do they get very upset? Because they know. They know what the truth is. Right? Just like Haman knew the truth. Right? Mr. Haman himself, the book of Esther. He also knew the truth. Everyone bowed down to him. He had plenty of fame, wealth, tons of kids strategically placed, in different countries being, or whatever, places that he had consolidated a lot of power, tremendous amount of power and wealth. One elderly Jew wouldn't bow. He went ballistic. He said, not only going to kill you, I'm going to kill your entire people. I'm going to wipe out everybody. Yeah, but what about everyone who bows him? What about all his money and fame? What happened? He knew the truth. Right? So when people know the truth, and everyone's, saying what they do is great, their spouse is great, this and that, but you come out and say something negative, because you have to stand up to Torah, they won't hear that. But they know what the truth is. They absolutely know what the truth is. Right? So, at the end of the day, um, um, again, keep in mind if there are people that have issues. They're mentally unstable, let's say. Or if they don't look mentally unstable. Right? But again, if they're giving other people a hard time and you, then it's not you. They're just giving other people a hard time also. Right? Yeah. So why does the person get singled out? I don't know. I don't have an answer, but again, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an issue. It's an issue that, I have an iron heart, this and that. Doesn't mean that. Right? We're talking about, an iron heart in general. Evil, the evil eye, which I spoke quite a bit about, right? These are things that happen above nature. Like something happened where it doesn't happen to other people like this. If it happens to other people like this, then it's not nine arm for sure. Yeah. But why am I thinking about more than anyone else? I don't know. I don't know why, but that doesn't mean you have an iron heart. And if someone's singling out, is bothering other people, they're bothering you at the same time, so that's not an issue. Because they're bothering other people. So, well, that's not singling you out. Right? If a person went to a place and they're the only ones out of anybody, people say things to and this and that's one thing. Right? It still might not be an issue. Still might not be an issue. Yeah, but at the same time, if other people are getting similar treatment, then then it's throwing up a problem because other people getting the same, having the same thing, right? But but again, any of these things, a person has to look internally, and see, is there a pattern, right? But again, if someone says, listen, these people want inappropriate contact, that's not a problem. I mean, it's let's say better. It's not a problem where a person has to say, "Oh, I'm doing something wrong." No, there are people out there that you can't interact with, you can't do things with. Yeah, so I'm not saying I have an eye in horror. I have I have this evil eye or other things, right? That's a totally different thing. Somebody asks, I'd mentioned one certain list of Psalms. Yeah, certain list of Psalms to ask for whatever you want are Psalms 90 to 100 and 106. Right now, the way you do it is, let me just put this up here. 92 1. The way you do it is like this. You have to say it every day, right? But before you say it, you have to say, I'm going to give a certain amount of charity, a little amount of charity. And if I get salvation, then I'm going to say the prayer Nishmas Kochai. Then you say the Psalms, and then after you say the Psalms, you have intention for one thing. For one thing, you do this for 40 days, even on Shabbos. You don't obviously keep charity on Shabbos, but you do this for 40 days. Now, after 40 days, there should be a change in the situation. If there's not a change in the situation, let's say if you miss one day, then you got to start again, right? Let's say there's not a change in the situation. So what do? Say it again, right? You just keep saying it, right? But you ask for one specific thing. Can't ask for multiple things. It's one thing, right? Whether they want to find a marriage partner, they want, parnot, they want livelihood, they want, I don't know, family member to become religious, they want someone to get healthy, they want health for themselves. One thing, one very specific thing, you do it for 40 days. You do it for 40 days. Now, again, is that a guarantee things are going to change? I mean, it is a proven thing. Definitely is a proven thing, but I would say if after 40 days, you track it, after 40 days, whatever you ask for, right? Whatever you ask for, if after 40 days it doesn't happen, you're going to say, well, it doesn't work. No, doesn't mean it doesn't work. Could be there's some other block going on, whatever it may be. You say it again. Say as many times as it takes, doesn't matter, right? It's something that is proven, right? But you have to have specific intention for one thing. So after 40 days, you can change it, something else. You can definitely change it to something else, right? But you have specific intention for one thing, right? Again, people say, I did it 40 days, didn't work. Okay, so do it again. Do it a second time. Do it a third time, right? It's not going to hurt. Saying to him never hurts. Saying to him for 40 days, specific ones also never hurts. Right? Now, the question is, am I going to get the desired result that I want? That's a different issue. Right? That 100%. That's a different thing. Right? That's a totally different thing. Again, even if it doesn't work, so what? Right? It's a proven thing. Since it is a proven thing, say it again. Right? You say it again. But you have to do it consistently 40 days. If you missed it, if you miss one day after sundown, then you missed it. So you got to start again. Right? But it is a proven thing. But keep in mind one thing. Anyone starts out in this process, no matter where they go, there are going to be detractors. There are going to be detractors. There are people going to say things. You could yell at us. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean you did anything wrong, per se. Right? Could be you did something wrong. Okay, but, let's say for argument's sake, they're detractors because you can't give them what they want. That has nothing to do with an evil eye. You can't do it. There's certain things you can't do. As much as you want. Even if you wanted to, you can't do. I've been yelled at a number of times. Okay, some things I for sure deserve. Other things, for certain things, the question by me is how much damage you're going to do. Damage control. That's it. Right? So, over the years, I know it's a question of how much you're going to get yelled at. But again, why are people upset? Because you're not doing what they want. But you can't do what they want. They try to be nice, try to be diplomatic. But at the end of the day, what happens? They don't like it. They don't want to be told what they can do, what they can't do, this, that. And they make it uncomfortable. Okay. So what's something I can change? There's only one thing I can change. Right? It's not a question how I give it over. That doesn't matter. Yeah. What's the one thing I can change? Torah. They want the Torah to be molded the way they want. Okay, it doesn't work. So if you're going to get screamed at because of something like that, that's not your fault. You say it's Torah's fault, but it's not your fault. You got to uphold Torah. So if you have to uphold Torah, if you have to uphold Torah and people don't like it, and they yell and scream, and you got to say, every place you went, there are people like that, that's not a problem. Because you're doing what the Torah said. You're upholding what the Torah said. So if you're upholding what the Torah said, who cares what they say? It's not a problem in you. It's, they'll say it's a problem in the Torah. Okay. But you're upholding what the Torah says. Someone asks, so I need to give charity and have intention to take on something new. So you have to have intention to say you're going to give charity, right? You're going to give, it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be, very little. You're going to give charity every time after, except on Shabbos. And you have to have intention for one thing. For one thing. Again, it could be health. It could be health for somebody else. It could be livelihood. It could be to find a mate, get married, let's say. But it's got to be one thing, right? It's got to be one thing. And while you're saying it for 40 days, it shouldn't change. In other words, you're going to say for one thing for 40 days. If you want to say something else another 40 days, very good. Don't mix them. It can only be one thing. Yeah. So we pointed out, if the person doesn't get answered, you do it again. Or you take on, you do something else. You have a mind for something else, whatever it is. Right? So, yeah. It has to be, you have to have in mind for one thing. That's what it is. Yeah, any other questions? All right, if there are no questions, and I'm going to sign out. I do this every Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock usually, Israel time. It was 8 o'clock tonight because changing the clocks tomorrow, so you're still an hour behind, or still an hour behind, or whatever, or ahead, whatever it is. Tomorrow I'll change the clocks, so all the clocks will go back to normal for everyone outside of the States. Otherwise, you can find out. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com. Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube, there are Q&As, Ethics for Our Fathers, Book of Leviticus. Anyone that has any question, want to send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com, whichever good.